Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with yet another podcast episode. This is now podcast episode. Wow, let's see, where are we up to now? We are at 109 now. So our next guest is podcast guest 109. This is brought to you by the Artist Index. Please check out our website at theartistindex.com. Generously supported by Heavenly Spirits Importers and working in collaboration with the Whaling Museum and the Whaling Museum's Common Ground Project. More about that will be coming up in the next few episodes. And also, thanks to our friends at Spectrum Marketing Group and the Mass Cultural Council. So with all that in mind, I want to have our guest, as per usual, introduce themselves and spell their name.
Hi, Ron. My name is Barbara Healy, Barbarahealy, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's funny because when the spelling your name, I think there was an old television show, What's My Line? And I think they would have the guests do the exact same sort of thing. It was sort of an interesting opening, kind of a soft opening. So how did you get into this whole art thing?
I've always been in the art thing. I grew up in an artistic family. My grandmother that lived next door was an artist in Connecticut. And she studied with a famous artist there, Albertus Jones. And she was pretty much a hobbyist, although I think she sold a few of her paintings. And my aunt was an artist. She lived on the other side of my grandmother. So my whole family was artistic. My mother always worked and I think was too busy to do much art herself, but she always brought us to museums and encouraged us to be artists.
Yeah, so it is. I strictly believe, after listening to so many stories, that a lot of it is by exposure, just being exposed to the arts, and that brings me to something I'd read years ago that said that a child whose bedroom is full of books, even though they've never opened or any of the books or been read to, will end up doing better in school just because they were surrounded by books. It's kind of a weird thing.
We had a lot of books in our house. They're still there. My parents are both 92 and they live in Connecticut.
God bless. What part of Connecticut?
South Windsor.
South Windsor.
It's a suburb of Hartford.
Yep.
And it was much more rural when I was growing up there.
My uncle Ernie, who had beauty salons in Hartford, had a home with one of his wives. He had about 4 of them in Windsor. I think it made it was really interesting because they were just like stuck into the pine. It was like, I remember the development. It was like sticking houses in the woods is really what it was. It was amazing how many trees there were there in that development. But when did the moment of truth strike you that this is what I want to do? This is, the rest of my life.
Well, I guess in high school, I did a lot of artwork. I was voted best artist of my class. So I just decided to go to college for art. Mm-hmm. And I started at UConn and I didn't really like it. The school is huge. And I started in graphic design and I just didn't feel like it was a good fit. So I transferred to SMU and I took textile design. And I really thought that was going to be what I did. And in between I took a short term, I thought at the time, job with the post office because I had done that a couple summers. And right when I got out of school, they offered me a job. And I was there for 33 years. So then I really feel like I reinvented myself as an artist. About 25 years ago, I got back into painting, and it's really a different kind of art than I went to school for. But I really throw myself into it, and I love it.
So 33 years with the post office. That's a long time.
I was a city carrier in Fall River with a bag on my shoulder.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in good shape then.
Well, I've been retired for 9 years.
Right. Now, did you, I may have missed it, thinking about something else. Did you continue painting at all, even like, occasionally or intermittently during that time?
When I first was working at the post office, I really didn't. I used to work 60-hour weeks, and we built our house. I got married, and I really put art aside for a while. I guess I did some, but not a lot. And then at some point I decided I really want to get back into it and started taking classes with Susan Cabral from Dartmouth. Mm-hmm. And I joined Bearstar Art Society in New Bedford. And that really helped me get back into art.
Does the Bearstar Society still exist?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, that was anathema to us at SMU or Southeastern Massachusetts University. For those of you who aren't from the area and familiar with the history, it's SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University, is now the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. I think they were going full bore around that time in the 70s, but they were traditionalists, very traditional objective painting, and we were just a bunch of wild and crazy abstract painters, hippies from SMU. Your work that you do now, how would you describe yourself as to your imagery?
I do mostly landscapes. I'm really inspired by this beautiful place that I live in. And I just find it ever changing. The weather's constantly changing. The seasons are constantly changing. I do a lot of plein air painting. All you need to do is turn around and you have a whole new scene. I am trying different things. I'm always taking classes. I'm trying different approaches. But, and I do some other things. I try to do some figure work and some still lifes. But I will say the landscape here really inspires me. And I think I'm an outdoor person. I love to boat and kayak and walk the beach and garden. And those are the things that I like. So that's what I like to paint.
Mm-hmm. The plein air thing seems to have really taken off in this area specifically. I think in Tiverton, I was watching these posts on Facebook and Instagram, and I know that your association with the Dartmouth Cultural Center and Jill Law and the wet paint and all those other plein air events, those were pretty much a one-day thing. But in Tiverton, for example, it looked like it was going on constantly, and it's kind of interesting to see people out there painting plein air, just like 100+ years ago.
Well, I paint with the Westport Art Group on Thursdays, mm-hmm. and I've been doing that ever since I retired from the post office. And I was dying to do it before, but occasionally when I had a Thursday off, I used to have a rotating schedule, I would paint with them. And they paint plein air the whole summer, even spring, fall, when it's a nice day. Mm-hmm. And it's a really fun group to go with. Why wouldn't you want to be outside on a nice day in a beautiful place, mm-hmm. Painting? And I find a lot of inspiration painting with other people. It's so amazing what they pick. You go to a place and you see, this is what interests me. This is what I picked. And they pick something completely different. And it's really interesting to me to see what people pick and how they make a piece of artwork out of it.
Yeah. The other aspect of plein air painting, and I haven't done it in a long time, is it's really excellent training, because that cloud isn't going to stay there because you're painting it. The light is constantly changing. I mean, there's just so many factors that you have to be totally lit up. You have to be totally connected to your environment to be doing plein air, right?
I think it makes you edit. It makes you edit in your mind that you can't put in everything. It's not like when you're working from a photograph and you can pick at each little thing and say, well, I'm going to put that in too. I'm going to put that in. You have to decide what's important. You have to get it down there. And I think if you let yourself go into the moment and really absorb your surroundings, it comes through in your painting.
Now, have you ever done a session where, and I don't know how regimented you are. I'm a Virgo, so that's not even for discussion. But to say, okay, I'm going to do plein air, and I'm going to do this one scene that I'm looking at, but I'm going to do 4 canvases, and just keep painting, because obviously each one of those canvases is going to, even though it's the same composition, primarily, the colors change, the light has changed, everything has changed. Even a moored boat will start to spin on its moorings. It won't stay in the same profile or 3/4 view or whatever.
Yes, and I think I have done that. And sometimes the one that you labored over first and spent the most time on is nowhere as good as the second one that you do, that you think you're going to do in just a short amount of time, but you've been studying it and looking at it, and things have changed, and you really can get it down there in a hurry and get it correct.
Does it imprint on your mind, you think? Is there become an imprint? I mean, where it's become second nature?
Somewhat. I do try to mix it up and try different approaches. I think I like it to be a struggle. If it gets too easy, it's not really making yourself reach as an artist. So I try to do, and sometimes they come out crappy. I have a whole bunch of those.
Well, when were you at SMU?
I graduated in 1980.
In 1980. So did you take any painting courses there?
I did not. I took like some introductory ones, and I'm really sorry that they told me at the time they were too full. And afterwards, I think I should have been much more assertive and said, I'm paying for my college education. You need to fit me into this class.
Right. Because, Tonieri, Elliott, McCoy, and Cummings, and Herb Cummings especially, always used to say that don't get too attached to anything that you do. It's all perspiration. It's all perspiration. It's the sweat of your artistic labor. And where you get trapped is when you think it's oh so pretty and oh so exquisite, and then he says you're doomed from that point on. But that was his philosophy.
Well, a teacher that I took a class with last year that I really enjoyed, Ed Chesovich. He's from the Cape. He's a wonderful painter, and he taught us about the 3 Ps, which I really like. That perfectionism leads to procrastination, which leads to paralysis. And I think I'm guilty of it. When I'm starting a new painting, I'm looking for the perfect photograph, like the perfect next thing that I'm doing, instead of just doing it. And sometimes it's the one that's kind of nagging in the back of your head, and you go, well, it probably won't come out that great. That really is better.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, when you're working, have you ever had, for lack of a better description, of an out-of-body experience where you see yourself painting? I mean, and your hand is moving, and you're putting stuff down, and you're going, "Oh my God." I can't believe I'm doing this. This is so great. I'm not even thinking about it. And it's just like all coming together. And have you ever had moments like that? Or?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Especially outside when I'm busy, like looking at my whole surroundings, and I'm painting, and I'm not really thinking about it and really get in the zone. I also dream about it. I wake up and I'm painting in my dreams.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Now, have you had experiences? And I remember, one of my, I mean, this is years ago. I can tell you exactly where it was. It was on Smith Neck Road, West Smith Neck Road, in Plein Air, and painting, and then being very conscious of, cars would be going by, and you could hear them slowing down, and you became self-conscious of that.
I painted enough outside. It really doesn't bother me.
I mean, yeah. After a while, it just, you just erase all that from your head, so people could come right behind you and be standing there staring at what you're doing, and you would have no idea they're behind you, right?
Yeah. But I think maybe from years of being a letter carrier, I can zone out dogs, people, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I guess you definitely were on a mission every single day, right? I mean,
yes.
You had to have that route. You had to stick to that route, and then obviously bob and weave where it was required. So I guess that was a very interesting parallel training to your artistic career. Now, you're a member of the South Coast Artists.
I am.
And how long have you been a member?
I was trying to think that. I think I've been on the tour now almost like 10 years.
Wow.
I didn't look exactly for quite a while now. And I really enjoy having people come to my house. My studio's over my garage. So I don't have a lot of hanging space, but I set up my garage stall. No, it's not fancy like some people's, but I have a lot of visitors. It's really wonderful. I have a lot of people that come back year after year. And I love being part of the group. I've learned so much from being part of this group with professional artists and made a lot of friends. Yeah.
Now, the tour, that's actually kind of a feather in everybody's hat, that it's, how many years has it been? I mean, I should know. I'm also a member, but I just only recently joined within the last year or so. But how many years has this thing been going on?
I think it's 16.
16 years. Wow. That's
well, like I say that. I'm not sure. I should know. I'm on the board.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes from day to day, right?
So what I do for South Coast Artists is I help people do their registration for the tour. And I learned a lot about that, a lot of computer stuff, which I'm the learning training while doing it. But to me, I'm not very techie, but I'm willing to try.
Right. Now, what towns does it cover?
Dartmouth, Westport, Tiverton, and Little Compton. So it is a large area for people to cover. Will
it ever come over to our side over here in Fairhaven and New Bedford? Because I was thinking, oh my gosh, that would be huge. I mean, it'd almost be like an entire other organization, I'm assuming.
Well, I think the problem is right now we limit it to 75 artists because really, even with that, you can't do the whole thing in 2 days.
Right.
And you kind of have to pick and choose. And we usually always sell out for those 75 artists. So I don't really think we can get any bigger.
But you have two tours a year, correct?
Yes.
All right. So the first tour covers one part of that territory? No,
they both cover all of it.
Okay. All right.
And we encourage artists to do both tours.
Okay. All right. So I mean, it would be, I mean, because from, having a studio, but not being in the area, in the tour area, you got to schlep all your stuff over. And, of course, with COVID, I mean, last year, it was really kind of interesting that the show went on, so to speak. Some people didn't do so well. And other, could you tell us about that? During doing this tour, the South Coast Artists Studio Tour, during the time of COVID?
Well, everyone felt very uncertain. A lot of people that regularly have done the tour didn't do the tour, especially people that have health problems or someone in their family has health concerns. And I certainly can understand that. And probably a lot of our normal customers didn't come. But a lot of people did do the tour. People wore masks. We encouraged people to have more of their artwork outside to feel safer about it.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like I had any problem at my house I was still very busy. Had a lot of people come.
Are you on a well-traveled road, or
No, I'm in the middle and I'm in the woods.
you're in the woods and people
Yes.
still beat a path to your door?
Yes. And it is a lot of people that have come year after year from doing it for a few years. They make sure they always come back and see me and what my new artwork is.
Mhm.
And I try to self-promote besides the South Coast and send out an e-blast and
Mhm.
do my Facebook, Instagram, and it's all marketing is part of being an artist now.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what is it that attracts the buyers / collectors?
I think people have to feel like they love a piece of artwork. And especially, I can look at a lot of different kind of artwork that I find very interesting. But if to buy it, to have it in my home is something I want to look at every day. And I have people who call me and email me and tell me all the time that they are so happy that they look at my artwork every day. And that's just a really nice thing.
Yeah, that is. That definitely is. That definitely is. So let's roll back to when you decided you're doing this full time now, right?
Yes.
I mean, as full time as you can possibly do, because I mean, none of us paints full time, not with the social media and the entering shows and writing grants and yeah.
Well, and I like to feel like I'm sort of retired and goof off a little bit.
That's a good thing. So what have been your high points in these how many years now? 9 years? 10 years?
Well, I really got back into painting like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I did about I was thinking about it in 2000. I spent a week on the Ernestina, which was it was supposed to be an artist trip, and we sailed from Philadelphia into the Chesapeake.
Wow.
And we did Tall Ships Delaware with all the other tall ships from all over the world. And we didn't do a whole lot of artwork on the ship. But it was just such a great experience. I think that was like a really fun thing that got me back into art too.
I mean, I had been on her a couple of times, but it was basically out into the bay, do a big circle, come back. And that was thrilling. I can't imagine what it was like to be out there. Now, did that trip at all foster any more investigations or studies into seascapes and the ocean and, boats and water, that kind of thing?
Well, interest in old boats, but I grew up being a fisherman with my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband and I have always been into boats. We used to have a sailboat. We have a power boat that's hibernating in my garage right now, but we have a 16-foot skiff we take out all the time, and I have my own kayak. I spend a lot of time on the water. And I love to do reference photos on the water in my kayak. It's great for exploring. I love that point of view where I'm really low in the water.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like you're right in it almost.
Yeah, it's almost like you're riding a bubble. It's the weirdest. The feeling of buoyancy to me has always been really, really interesting.
And you really get out in quiet nature, and you see a lot of birds and time to think and look. I feel like I'm always observing, even when I'm not painting. I'm looking at colors and shapes and thinking about it. I play a game with myself sometimes. What color is it? You look at a road and it's gray, but the part in the sun is kind of orange yellow. The part in the shade is kind of blue purple. That day, on a different day, maybe it's red.
So you're painting in your head pretty much.
I am.
Yeah, yeah. Now, beside the South Coast Artists group and the tour and such, exhibiting, and that takes quite a bit of hustle, I guess. I mean, you've always got to be ready because, you know, it always seems like when those call for submissions show up for some reason, it's like, why didn't I see this before? Now I've got 3 days to get ready to put something in this show. Yeah.
It is. I'm lucky. I'm in two galleries, in Norton Gallery in Plein Air and Rogers Gallery in Mattapoisett.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also an juried exhibiting artist at Cape Cod Art. So I do some of their shows. I do my open studio. I just entered something in Spring Bowls, Fakes and Forgeries. I do some shows down there. There's such a nice co-op gallery in Newport. Mm-hmm. And I belong to a lot of the art associations, Marion and Taunton and Westport. And I enjoy doing my local art ones. I love the association, being part of an art group, being a part of an art community.
What is it about the art community part that you like the best?
I think we're very supportive of each other. I learn from other artists. I love my friend Robin Nunes and I do a lot of art things together. We like to go to shows and look at art. We go enter things together. And I think everybody really helps everybody else out. I think it's a very positive feeling. I know some people feel competitive and they're not happy if they don't do as well as other people. I don't really feel that.
Yeah, I mean, I just there's a couple of things. I mean, we had a tragedy in our community with a husband and wife, both artists. They lost a member of their family, and the outpouring was phenomenal of support and sympathies and such. We've had situations where other artists have fallen on hard times. And people are there to help out, with whatever they can do. So it is a very tight knit, maybe is a good word, don't know, but it's a very close community, and there is a lot of support for each other's work. And the competitive aspect of it is I really have never really felt it. And if it was there, people they don't say anything. But there have been
the one good part of that, I think, is that when I see some of my friends being very successful, mm-hmm. Sometimes it gives me a little push and say, well, yeah, I like being retired, but I should work a little harder. I should enter that extra show. I should do a little more. Yeah.
We had a situation where a couple of really adept artists who enjoy a modicum of success, they both got rejected from shows that they entered, and they were kind of stunned about that. And I guess it happens. I mean, we are always setting ourselves up for evaluation, regardless of if you think it's just a show. No, it's actually an evaluation. I mean, what is our worth, our self-value is based on whether or not we get into a show.
I've been rejected from a lot of them.
Well, yeah, the more you enter, the more you get rejected, right?
Yes.
There's got to be some sort of a ratio between the accepting the shows that we get accepted into and the ones we get rejected from. Now, Cape Cod, I've been hearing a lot of that. Jill Law, especially, has told me about it. Could you tell us a little bit about the Cape Cod Art Association, and why is it that? Stop and think about it. It's on the end of God's finger, if you to use that expression. This is not exactly a place that you drive by. This is a place you have to drive to, and yet the Cape and its art scene seems to be as vibrant as any other.
Well, the Cape has a history of being the big art scene for a long time. T-Town has been an artist mecca for 100 years. And actually, I think Jill's associated with the Cape Cod Cultural Center, which I go to there for shows all the time. It's wonderful. But I belong to the Cape Cod Art Center, which is different. It's in Barnstable. And they have a lot of classes and they have shows there. And it's a great organization.
Oh, good, good. What benefit is it to you to belong to something that's not exactly in your title pool, of the same zone that the South Coast Artists covers?
Well, I love taking classes down there. I usually take 1 or 2 a year, and I turn it into an art day that I drive down to the Cape and take my class, and I do some hiking down there, and I do some photography, or I paint for a while on my own, or go to galleries. So I really love doing that. And I like showing down there. It's another whole group to associate with. One fun thing that I did last year with my friend Robin Nunes, we both, through them, participated in the Hydrangea Festival, which is they had gardens all week that people visited. It was a big flower festival. And we painted for one day, and we were really lucky. We painted in this man who's Mr. Hydrangea, Mel Condon. He's like 80 years old and has a wonderful garden. And we got to paint at his house. And they had like hundreds of people that came through while you were painting, and you got to paint in this gorgeous spot. It was really fun.
Now, I can't remember, and I could be wrong on both counts, but one or the other is a native plant, the hydrangea or the rhododendron.
The rhododendron is native.
It is native. All right. So the hydrangea is Chinese or Asian?
I think Chinese, although it's very big in Portugal, Azores.
The Azores,
is all wild hydrangeas.
Yeah. They're absolutely a beautiful flower. The type of artwork that is exhibited at the Cape Cod Art Center, comparative to the type of art that is exhibited at WAG, Westport Art Group, Dartmouth Cultural Center, the South Coast Tour. Am I missing any other big ones around? Marion Art Center, the MAC, as they refer to it now. How different is it? I mean, and do we have is there a style? Is there a Southwest art, for example, is pretty simple because it's sand, skulls, sun, cactus. That's pretty easy to pick up. But is there a style that is either similar to what goes on here in South Coast Massachusetts, or do they have one of their own?
I think both the Cape Cod Art Center that I belong to and the Cultural Center that Jill does, both of them are very eclectic. So they have artists of all different, very traditional artists who are painting landscapes with boats, which is kind of what I do, but also very modern artists, all different. So I think there are a lot of artists on the Cape. It's a lot of competition, but in a good way. You see a lot of different kinds of art.
So I remember, I think, writing an artist statement once saying, well, being an abstract artist in a coastal, in an historic coastal seaport town has its challenges. Because a lot of these associations, I mean, you're the only abstract guy in the group, and then there's this whole you don't kind of fit. But it seems like it's evolved quite a bit, right?
Yes, well, and I think T-Town always had very modern artists. If you go to galleries there are some traditional artists, but there's a lot of modern art in Provincetown. And the Cotuit Center of the Arts, that's a wonderful gallery. They carry a really eclectic shows, all kinds of art. Some of it's very modern.
So would a a midwinter trip be worth it to take to P-Town?
Oh, I think definitely. I think maybe some of the galleries close in January. You really have to check schedules.
Okay. So they, like a lot of places will paint and polish, that kind of thing. They'll close down. They'll do all their repair works or remodeling or whatever they have to do, and it's also a respite for them as well.
I think a lot of them take a vacation somewhere warm.
Yeah, that's
maybe not this year. I thought I would, and we're not. So
yeah. The and this is an area where, I mean, there's buyers and there's collectors. How do you differentiate between both or each?
Well, I'm lucky. I have a couple collectors. I have a couple in Maine that has bought about 8 paintings from me. And I have a woman in Ohio that originally lived around here that has quite a few of my paintings, and I've shipped them out to Ohio to her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice. I have people that have come back after buying one painting, maybe buying a small painting one year, and come back and say, oh, I really love that painting, so I want to buy something larger. So that's really nice.
So how large is your largest painting?
I think that I've been working on some that are 36 by 48, 3 feet
Wow.
by 4 feet.
3, 4, yeah, right. That's a good size painting.
Yeah.
Is there a market for that size?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. I think people with bigger houses, some of these houses have huge walls.
Yeah, good for the artist, that's for sure. Have you I would say, have you noticed, but there are so many artists. Does there seem to be more artists than ever before, or is it that just more visible than they've ever been before, you think?
Well, I think in our area, maybe because our area really supports the arts with things like the South Coast Studio Tour, and then everything that New Bedford has going on with AHA Nights and all their things supporting the arts there. I think artists maybe gravitate to this area. I don't know if there's more artists everywhere, but we also see more artists because people are on Facebook and Instagram. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I look at artists that are in Russia, different places that I never normally would get to see, but I'm aware of them because of that.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, this is January, even though we're heading towards the bottom of the month, and this podcast probably won't be available until sometime in February, because we line them up, try to get a good bunch ahead of time, because sometimes what happens is it's with this, that, or the other. It's a little hard getting people's schedules to line up to do a podcast and so on and so forth. But any resolutions, any pronouncements, any big plans for you for this year, for 2022? My goodness.
I send out a Thursday email to my group that I paint with on Thursdays.
Yeah.
And in the summer, it's where we're going to paint. And so I sent them out some resolutions this year to think about. And the first one was no more boring art. No more boring art.
How are you going to prevent that? Not that your art is boring, because that sounds almost like a...
No, I'm just trying new things.
Mm-hmm.
I just tried an experimental piece that I'm donating to the Westport Watershed Alliance for their winter show. That I use new tools on. I did a different approach. So I'm trying new things.
yeah. And what do you think of this? That it seems that this such a huge concern or curiosity or need for technique. You know, there's like encaustic, for example, that hasn't gone away in a long time.
I just tried it this week. It was so much fun. I tried it with Josie Arkins at the Art Cafe. Yes.
And what did you get out of it? I mean, because when we did it with Tonieri at SMU, it was pretty dangerous because we were using white lead.
Oh,
yeah.
We were using a little
black oil, as they called it. Yeah.
Hot plate thing, and it was interesting. A whole different way to do things, to put on color and move it around. And I just like the feel of it and the sheen of it. It was interesting.
There's a couple of method styles. I guess one is cold and one is hot or warm. Because
that was hot, and that was my first time doing hot. But I do use cold wax when I'm painting. Sometimes it's something new I've tried. Mm-hmm. I usually work in layers, and sometimes the cold wax can make it a little more transparent and bright colors. I use them like spatula tools to put it on, take it off.
Yeah.
I like to have some of my layers showing through, so it shows that process, even when it's done. I have no interest, even though my things are representational usually, I don't want it to look like a photograph. That's not my aim.
Yeah. So it's obvious that you're an oil painter, versus an acrylic painter.
I do a little acrylic too. I'm playing around with it.
Mm-hmm. What's the big difference for you? What's the likes and dislikes of each?
Well, oil paint, it stays wet for a long time, so it blends more. And acrylic paint, the best thing about it is it dries so fast, and the worst thing about it is it dries so fast.
Yeah, it's true. And once upon a time too, I used to, when I was still an oil painter, I found that the acrylic colors were very acidic. They just looked off for some reason. They didn't have the same sort of density, the same hues, same values as oil did. And the other thing about oil too is that it smelled. The smell of the oil.
It does, and I get it everywhere. I'm a messy painter.
Yeah, the smell of the oil was something else. And then when we were doing the encaustic, which is basically black oil, it was almost like an ointment. So it was very buttery, and there's something really, for lack of a better term, sexy about how the brush goes over the surface of the canvas when it's all that creamy and butteriness that goes with it. And the paint just doesn't lay flat. It has depth to it. So there's more light penetrating the layer of paint, So yeah. Now, do you do printmaking at all?
I tried it, but I can't really say it's my thing.
Would you try it? And I'm asking several people this because somebody was asking me, what do you think are the things that we lack in this area that artists would like to see more of? And I thought of two things, basically. One of them would be great to have a ceramics center, for lack of a better term, where instead of buying all that hardware, the wheels and the kilns and all the other stuff, you pretty much go in there and it's like adult daycare. You pay your fee, you get so many pounds of clay. You throw your clay, you dry it, the whole process, and you're using someone else's equipment and you're providing them with a source of income. And then you could also take lessons if you wanted to advance your pot throwing skills. But on the other side of that would be printmaking. And that's one of the things I, in particular, miss a heck of a lot, is the not being able to do printmaking.
Well, Ron, actually at Westport Art Group, we have a fantastic press. And it has not been being used lately. So we're hoping to get printmakers to come back and use our wonderful press that we have.
Really?
And yeah, Josie Arkins is one of the people that hoping to help make that happen. But yes, you'll have to come in and look at it.
I'm going to have to ask my friend and BFA 75 classmate, Bob Deck. He's a new member of WAG, of the Westport Arts Group, about that. And I think, yeah, I mean, he did a lot of printmaking when we were in school. I'll have to ask him about that, because that's again, it's a whole nother way to explore. It's a whole nother way to create these connections in the synapses in your brain, things that you discover doing one kind of art comparative to another. Like, for example, when I was doing primarily abstract work, doing abstract drawings for the sake of drawings, and not as studies for art, for an abstract piece. I always found that bizarre. Why would you do drawings for an abstract piece of work and then copy the drawing? It didn't make any sense in my head. But the biggest failure I think I ever had as an artist was not being able to interpret the same feeling, the same vibe, the same results that I, would get drawing into painting, because two totally different media. One's wet, one's dry, that kind of thing.
But I think I like to draw, and I'm really working on trying to do more drawing and work from a sketchbook and draw all the time and try different things drawing that are never going to be something that I sell. That's one thing. It's a different mindset. You're not making something that you're going to sell. It's just playing around. It's just drawing. And I think it's totally making your hand do what your mind is telling you to, and looking for shapes and design, and not necessarily your brain getting into things. I am painting a tree, a hand. It's totally different. But I don't usually draw out my paintings. To me, it's I may do a sketch first, a small sketch, usually not a detailed sketch, maybe a value sketch, a NOTAM, and then I go into painting. But I do think the drawing helps me. I just don't do a detailed drawing of any painting that I'm going to do. It's just not my approach. Right.
It seems too sad. I read an article someone posted that schools are getting away from drawing. It's the weirdest thing. And yet it seems like of all the artists that I know of a certain age, everybody's going back to it as much as they possibly can, because the value there it's invaluable.
And I think it's a skill that everyone should learn, not just artists.
Exactly.
I have pictures that my grandfather drew in elementary school that are wonderful. And it used to be everyone had to learn how to do some drawing. And I think like observational drawing, it's something fun I like to do. I like to do nature drawings with a sketchbook outside, where you're really observing how that flower is put together scientifically. And when you just look at something, you don't get that grasp of it until you actually start to draw it. And I do think I substituted in Westport schools for about 7 years. After I got done with my letter carrier's career, I haven't gone back since COVID. I substituted a lot of art, but I did all different classes. But in art, I think so many kids today, they want to do the manja art and art out of their head. And they really felt like they didn't want to draw real things.
You think they were afraid of failure?
I just think they find the manja gaming art as, I don't know, it's what's sexy to kids now. It's what's fun to kids. I don't know if it's really failure. I don't think they've tried it that much. And I don't think school pushes it that much.
Right. I mean, it's a mechanical skill. and at the very, very least, I mean, aesthetics aside, it's a mechanical skill. It's observation. You have to learn scales, composition. You have to learn the art of observation itself. It makes a big difference. I mean, for the longest time, I've been hoping that somebody with deep enough pockets and someone who's well connected, well endowed, to support this kind of endeavor would create a high school of visual and performing arts. So I think there's so many kids that really need that kind of direction, whether they pursue the arts or not. I think it's just good discipline.
Well, then I do think, like they say, kids that learn music are better at math. I think using the creative side of your brain helps in other ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The art groups that you belong to, what have been the biggest takeaways for you from each one of them? I don't mean to put you on a spot, but it's
Well, Westport Art Group, and I am on the board there too. I'm the chair of adult ed, so I help find teachers there. I love painting with my Thursday group, and I help them do shows. It's been a good journey with them. I've done a lot of. We used to do artists in the garden, and it's a good group to paint with. We also have a group of Monday painters that's unofficial that just sit together and plein air paint on Mondays. That's another group that's from there. My South Coast artist is really many of the artists are more professional that I really learned how to do the art business from, and that's been really interesting. And I've been a member of Taunton for a long time. They have wonderful artist demos up there, and I went to them for years, made a lot of friends up there. This summer, I did a demo up there. I also did one at Taunton, and that was really, at Foxborough,
right.
And that was really fun.
Let me stop you there, because there's two people's names popped up. One, I think she was one of the founders of the Westport Art Group. She was also on our BFA 75 class. She's kind of disappeared, and either because she now has a married name, or she's totally moved out of the area, or hopefully nothing worse than that. Patty Churchill. Does that name ring a bell at all?
I don't know her.
Yeah, she's sort of an enigma, because like I said, I think she was a driving force for she started it. It had to be, we graduated in 75, so she had to have either A, began her involvement, or B, started the group somewhere between 75 and 80.
Actually, the Westport Art Group has been going since 1956.
Okay. Wow. So
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe she was, because I remember her, that's all she ever, she led it for several years and such. But okay, and then the other one is Vivian Lewis, a neighbor, who I was contacted by her daughter, because unfortunately, Mrs. Lewis is an early onset of her dementia. But she was a commercial artist. She was.
I took a class from her years ago.
Did you? Oh,
Yes.
That's so wonderful. We'll have
Yes.
to talk more about that. We're trying to get her on a show with her daughter, Heidi.
I took a watercolor class from her years ago, and I also was lucky to study with Christine Bean watercolor. She's now 101.
Right. I've been trying to get her on a show, and I think Nancy Hayes is it either Nancy or Carol Way Wood has been trying to budge her, because I remember seeing Christine's work. Oh my gosh, had to be 50 years ago, and I was thunderstruck by her hands.
She was such a good teacher. We used to meet in her cellar. Her husband would bake us cookies. It was a wonderful experience, and she's just such a nice person.
Wow. So, do you remember Ruth Atkinson as well?
Yes, but I can't say I knew her well.
Right. She had her studio, and she sold art supplies, just a couple of doors the building was set back. I think it's Strawberry Moon or whatever now, or was at one time, just behind Norton Framing and Gallery. But wow, that's interesting. So we're going to wrap this up, and because wow, it's amazing how fast the time has gone by. And I really do want to speak with you a little bit more about Vivian Lewis. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll ask Heidi. I'm sure her mom would love, in her more lucid days, would love to hear a former student talking about her. If that's, and plus there's a whole bunch of artwork that's for sale. We're trying to get a retrospective show of hers while she's still able to absorb that kind of just, that honor. So, what's the one thing, rather than the one thing that you wish you could do more of, what's the one thing that you wish you could have done more of? So more putting you more into the past than into the present and future.
Well, I wish I had gotten back into art sooner when I was working at the post office. I put it off for a long time. I just felt too busy. And I think we all do that. We're too busy for our art. We don't take the time to do it.
Right. 40 years in
Make it a
advertising.
priority.
Brain exercises all day long. I would have come home less exhausted if I was doing physical labor than doing mental labor all day long. And I'm sure with the post office, it was, being a letter carrier is a little bit of both. I mean, you have to think and body and mind have to work together.
Yeah, but mostly you're physically tired by the time you get home.
Right.
But
So
I'm really looking forward to taking more classes myself. I know people say to me, "Well, you teach classes," and I do, but I don't think I need to stop learning myself. I'm hoping when COVID is relaxed, I'd like to do more traveling and take more workshops other places.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward. And I really like this plein air thing. I was really lucky this fall. I was invited to an invitational plein air in Pawtucket, one of 12 artists. And that was really fun. And I'm hoping to do some more of those like plein air events.
Oh, good. All right. Is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with? Because this is, I don't want to scare you, but this is kind of for the historic record. This is all going to be archived in the Whaling Museum, in the Whaling Museum's archives. And, words of wisdom for the people of the present and those of the future. Could be your, I don't know if you have any grandchildren or great grandchildren, but this will be accessible to them.
Well, for art lovers, I would say we all get so used to seeing things on the computer that goes the art in person. It is so much different to see it in person, up close. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't have the same feeling. So there's plenty of places to see it at art galleries and museums. And I find that I look at art on the computer and I see it in person. And I just think, wow, that is so different. But I know during COVID, it was difficult for people to get out. But I hope you can get out places and see artwork. And for artists, I do feel like I like to work in my studio sometimes alone and really concentrate on things and try something that I feel like I have to mentally work on. I often work late at night. I don't get myself started till late, and then I end up working late at night. I don't want to stop. But I also really enjoy being part of an art community. And I think that is one way to really forward your artwork is to join a group, take a class, don't feel isolated. I like painting with other people. I think it's fun.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Barbara Healy, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And that wraps up episode 109. And this is Ron Fortier, your host of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artists Index seascapes.com, supported by Heavenly Spirits Imports, and also in collaboration with the New Bedford Whaling Museum's Common Ground Project and the Mass Cultural Council. So with all that in mind, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.